Hey guys, tonight we're heading deep into the sun-baked sands of ancient Persia. You're standing in a vast, golden landscape where the wind itself is part of survival, and where empires rose beneath skies so clear they shimmered like molten glass. Your sandals crunch over clay dust as you pass a row of mud brick homes, each one weathered but cleverly designed. The heat presses in from all sides, thick, slow, almost thoughtful in the way it wraps around your shoulders. It's not just hot here, it's cruel. This is the kind of place where a ripe melon will sweat and spoil before noon if you don't keep it shaded. And yet, somewhere in this parched kingdom, there's a building where a jug of sweet pomegranate juice stays cold to the touch. It shouldn't be possible, but it is. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and what time you're listening in the comments. I always love seeing where in the world we're drifting off together. Now let's settle in, because tonight we're going to uncover the gently miraculous way ancient Persians outwitted the desert and kept their drinks cold with nothing more than mud, wind, and quiet genius. You blink against the rising sun, the world's still silent, save for the soft rustle of palm leaves and the occasional hum of an insect too lazy to buzz properly. The year is, well, uncertain, but the Achaemenid Empire rules most of everything worth ruling, and you're here alive, barefoot, and squinting toward a low hill where your palace sort of rests in sloping, sand-colored glory. The city of Yazd is not yet known by that name, but its spirit is here already. A place born of compromise with the elements, where architecture isn't about aesthetics, it's about not boiling alive. Everything around you is sun-bleached and dry. The sky, the stone paths, even the leaves have the pale, crisp look of parchment. But the people here have learned to dance with the heat instead of fighting it. Narrow alleyways funnel shade. Thick walls hold coolness like a secret. And somewhere out there, a shepherd pours goat's milk into a bowl that's been resting in a clay pot buried in the earth overnight. That milk? Cold. Still, the heat will rise. It always does. Soon, the flat roofs will shimmer, the cobbled courtyards will glow like coals, and any bird stupid enough to fly at noon will drop from the sky like a feathered dumpling. You tug your scarf over your head and make your way toward the palace kitchens. You're just a servant, an unremarkable one at that. But you've recently been entrusted with a rather prestigious mission. Ensure that the king's evening drink is as cold as his mood during tax season. No pressure. See, your ruler, an Achaemenid noble who styles himself the breath of summer, has recently returned from Babylon with grand stories of date wines and apricot syrups served refreshingly chilled. And now, of course, he expects no less from his own court. His favorite? A concoction of rosewater, honey, and snow-chilled peach pulp, which would be easy if you lived on a mountain. But you don't. You live in the middle of a sun-drenched, dust-wrapped plain that hasn't seen snow in months. So how do you do it? You start by visiting the palace's storage courtyard. Beneath a heavy clay slab, set into the cool earth, lies a pit used for aging pickles, preserving cheese, and, most recently, storing lumps of glacial ice packed in straw and sawdust. This treasure came down from the Zagros Mountains in a mule-led caravan 2 weeks ago, traveling only at night. What remains now is precious, sweating slightly under the straw. You touch one lump. Cold. Not icy, but cold enough. The drink itself is already prepped. Rose water distilled earlier in the month by an old woman who swears the scent is more fragrant if you chant while bottling. The peach pulp was mashed yesterday, then dried slightly in the shade to concentrate the flavor. Honey from desert bees gives it all that molten, sunlit sweetness. All you need now is chill. But that's the thing. Ice storage is only half the solution. The real trick? You've heard whispers of a tower near the city's edge. A wind tower. Something strange and experimental. It's not made to hold anything. It doesn't carry banners or bells. But supposedly, the wind moves through it, and what comes out is cool air. At first, you thought this was some kind of riddle. But now, sweating into your sandals and squinting at the heat haze rising off a nearby wall, you're starting to wonder if it's worth a look. Because tonight, The king expects his drink to be served with a silver spoon resting on a chilled ceramic cup. And he's not a man known for patience. You wake early the next morning, though the sun has already risen. It always gets the first word in Persia. The heat is less of a presence now and more of a personality. Moody, lazy at dawn, but guaranteed to throw a tantrum by midday. You're used to it. Everyone is. But that doesn't mean you like it. And today, you have a single goal. Keep the king's sherbet cold long enough for him to drink it with a raised eyebrow and not call for your head. You're not particularly important in the palace hierarchy. Your title isn't impressive. It translates loosely to junior cup attendant, which is just fancy talk for someone who carries things, pours things, and is invisible in a crowd. But you do have one distinction. You're the only servant who dared ask about the wind tower. So, your supervisor, a short, round man who smells faintly of vinegar and stress, has granted you permission to investigate. Not because he believes in the wind tower, mind you, but because the kitchen ice has been sweating faster every day and the mountain delivery won't come for another week. You got half a block of melt and a bucket of wet straw. Not promising. You pass through the outer gate and into the sun again, clutching a clay jug of honeyed water and a cloth-wrapped peach for breakfast. The palace looms behind you, tall, serene, smug in its perfect geometry. Ahead, the city sprawls outward, its rooftops a mix of domes, terraces, and the occasional goat. You thread through narrow alleys, nodding to bakers, potters, and a boy beating a dusty rug with alarming enthusiasm. A cool drink in this heat? It's a mad dream. People don't talk about cold. They talk about shade. They talk about breeze. But cold? That's the language of mountaintops and distant winters. Still, they've heard things. One man gestures vaguely toward the edge of town, where the mud brick buildings begin to thin and the earth starts to rise. He says something about the tower that pulls air from God's pocket. Whatever that means, you find it eventually. It's not grand, not like you imagined. The tower doesn't glisten. It doesn't whisper magical winds. It just stands there tall, four-sided, like a chimney that got ideas above its station. At its base is a small structure, low to the ground, made of thick adobe. It's clearly meant to be cooler than the outside world. You step closer. There's no door, just an arched opening, and inside it feels different. The air shifts against your skin. Not cold, but not hot either. And more than that, it moves. Not like a draft. It breathes. You step inside, and the outside world dulls instantly. The air feels denser. Smells of clay and old straw. It's quiet in the way a deep cave might be. You turn in a slow circle, looking up the central shaft of the tower. It splits into 4 arms at the top, each open to a different direction. You squint and think you can see the sky, bright and far away. And that's when you feel it again, a soft current of air brushing past you as if apologizing for the heat outside. It's not cold, but it's cooler than anything you felt all day. And steady, gentle, patient. You stand there for a long moment, trying to understand it. This isn't a shrine. It isn't a home. It's a machine. A very, very quiet one. A man enters behind you. You startle. He doesn't. He's old, but in a wiry, weather-worn way that suggests he's never stopped moving for more than a day. His hands are stained with clay and something darker. He looks at you like he's seen 1,000 versions of you before. You're here for the air, he says. You nod, not sure what else to say. He walks past you and touches the wall lightly. The tower drinks from the wind, and the earth feeds it. You're not sure if this is poetry or instruction, but either way, it sounds promising. He leads you around to the back of the structure, where a trench has been dug, deep and cool. The wind enters high, he explains, and it travels down. But the earth helps. We build this chamber low. Thick walls, north-facing, always shade. The air that enters doesn't rush, it glides. The hotter it is outside, the stronger the pull. The sun makes its own enemy. You blink. So if it works better, the worse the heat? He grins. Desert irony. He lets you walk through the space again. This time, you crouch near a shallow clay basin that's been set into the floor. Inside, a ceramic jug sits, half full. You touch it. It's not icy, but it's cool. Cool enough that, for a moment, You want to drink it all just to remind your bones what relief feels like. The old man doesn't give you a name, but he does give you permission. Bring your drink. Try it here. Let the wind do what it was made to do. You thank him awkwardly too loudly. He just nods and begins checking the vents again, muttering about sand and nests and pigeons. As you walk back to the palace, something settles in you. A kind of certainty. You might not be an engineer, but you can feel the truth of it. That tower works. It moves air in a way that makes sense. Quiet, humble, deliberate. You go to try it. Tonight, the king will get his sherbet. And maybe, just maybe, it will be cold enough to impress. Back in the palace kitchens, things are moving at their usual chaotic hum. Pots clatter. Bread rises. A boy is crying because he dropped a jar of cumin and now smells like someone's spice drawer. No one notices when you slip in from the courtyard, still dusty from the walk. You head straight to the storage room and lift the stone slab again. The last of the ice sits there like a pale, tired ghost of winter, sweating into the straw like it knows it's not long for this world. You touch it, barely cold now. You'll use it, of course, but it's clear that ice alone can't win this battle. You've already got the drink ingredients. Rosewater, peach mash, honey, and a pinch of something floral, perhaps dried violets or crushed saffron, depending on the king's mood. But before you mix, you need to chill. That's when you do something slightly scandalous. You take one of the ceramic cups, a small lidded jug, and 2 pieces of the remaining ice, each wrapped in cloth to slow the melt. And then you leave. Again, this time, your feet know the way. Through the alleys, past the lazy goats and impatient vendors, and toward that tall, quiet tower like it's always been waiting for you. The old man is there again, sitting cross-legged on the ground, shelling dried peas. He doesn't speak, just nods. You slip into the chamber. It's cooler than you remembered. Or maybe you're just hotter. Either way, there's a relief in the stillness. The outside heat presses against the walls like an angry thought, but in here time slows. You unwrap the ice, place it in the basin, and set the jug nearby. Already, you can see condensation forming on the clay. The walls are thick, yes, but it's the wind that matters. You crouch beside the jug and just wait. Not long, maybe an hour, but it feels like a stolen eternity. You listen to the faint sound of wind trickling through the tower, like a desert lullaby. You imagine someone designing this centuries ago, not with blueprints, but with instinct, feeling where the wind wanted to go, letting it speak. The jug is cooler now, not frosty, but cool enough that your fingers hesitate on its side. When you open the lid and stir the contents gently, the scent of rose and peach wafts up, carried lightly by the very air meant to chill it. You smile. The old man peeks in and grunts approvingly. It will work, he says. It already has. You thank him again, this time softer. He still doesn't tell you his name. Back at the palace, you prepare for service. The jug is swaddled in linen, kept shaded beneath an overhang until the exact moment it's needed. You mix the chilled nectar with a final dash of honey and pour it into a cup that's been resting in cool clay. It's not snow, no. It's not even mountain cold, but it's unmistakably, refreshingly cool. And for Persia, especially here, especially now, that's something close to magic. You carry the drink through a marble corridor lit by golden light. The king lounges beneath a painted awning, fanned lazily by servants. He doesn't look at you until you're kneeling with the tray. He takes the cup, pauses, sips, and raises one eyebrow. Not both, just the one, which by royal standards is the equivalent of thunderous applause. You bow deeply and withdraw, heart hammering in your chest like a trapped bird. Later, your supervisor corners you in the spice room. "What did you do?" he hisses. The king asked for the exact same drink tomorrow. Same cup, same cold, same everything. You shrug, playing humble. "Just use the wind," you say. He blinks at you like you've spoken in riddles. And you don't correct him. You lie awake that night on your woven mat, staring up at the clay ceiling, thinking about the way the tower breathed. The way it cooled without effort, without force. It just allowed nature to do what it already wanted. You wonder how many people have passed it by, never realizing the brilliance it hides in silence. The next morning, you're up before the sun. And for the first time, not because of duty. You want to see the wind move again. You return to the tower with purpose now, not just curiosity. There's a shift inside you, subtle, like the cooling breeze itself. What was once a novelty now feels like the beginning of an understanding, not just of air and earth and shadow, but of a kind of ancient wisdom buried in bricks and passed down in silence. This time, you bring more than a jug. You bring questions. The old man is already there, stirring something in a shallow clay pan, figs drying, or maybe tamarind paste. He doesn't look surprised to see you. In fact, you get the sense he would have been more surprised if you hadn't come back. You squat beside him and, after a moment, ask, "Who built this place?" He doesn't answer at first, just wipes his hands, rises, and gestures for you to follow. Around the back of the tower, there's a low stone wall. Beyond it, the land stretches into tawny, cracked plains. He points, not at anything in particular, but at everything. Not who, he says. Many whos, over many whens. He means it literally, you realize. This isn't one person's invention. It's generations stacked on generations, trial by hot wind and cracked clay. A communal memory, slowly sculpted into utility. The first ones dug, he continues. Then they shaped. Then they watched. When the wind came, they made towers. When it didn't, they made slopes. And suddenly it clicks. You thought the tower was the invention, but it's just the crown. Beneath it, beneath you, there's something older. He leads you to a hidden door at the base of the tower's adjoining chamber. Not really a door, more of a stone that's clearly been moved more often than the others. Together, you shift it aside and reveal a narrow stairwell carved into the ground. Cool air rushes up from below. Not harsh, not cold, just steady, like breath. You descend slowly, your footsteps muffled by packed earth. The walls are rounded, almost organic. You run your fingers along the curve of one. Smooth, cool, slightly damp. At the bottom, the passage opens into a wider chamber. You duck instinctively. The ceiling is low, and the air smells of clay and water and something faintly mineral. In the center is a shallow basin, this one much larger than the one above, and around it, you see the beginnings of channels carved into the floor. It's not just a wind tower, it's a yakhchal. You've heard the word before. Whispers in the kitchen, mentions in passing. Ice pit, cold vault, a place where the rich stored winter. But you'd never seen one. You thought they were myths, like flying carpets or fair taxes. Here, the old man says the ice sleeps. You kneel beside the basin, still empty but ringed with mineral stains that speak of many cold seasons. He explains, during winter, ice is gathered, sometimes from nearby streams, sometimes delivered in blocks from higher elevations. It's lowered into the chamber, covered in layers of straw, cloth, and ash. The thick walls and underground location protect it from the sun's rage. And above, the tower draws air through, circulating it, keeping it dry, keeping it still. Stillness, you learn, is essential. Movement warms things, but the right kind of movement, the kind that flows gently, predictably, can preserve. You ask him how long the ice lasts. He shrugs, sometimes until the next ice comes. Your mind reels. Months of 40-degree heat, and still they preserve winter in the ground? It's not magic. It's engineering. Ancient, dusty, brilliant engineering. The yakhchal doesn't fight the desert. It negotiates with it. It uses the extremes, the cold nights, the dry air, the predictable winds, to build something quietly revolutionary. You look up at the vent that connects to the tower above. Even from this low point, you feel the soft kiss of wind moving past your cheeks. It's not just cooling the chamber, it's preserving memory. You rise slowly, dusting your hands, and the old man leads you back into the light. When you emerge, the heat feels heavier, as if insulted by your brief betrayal. He sits again beside his figs. You sit too. There's silence. Not awkward, just full. Finally, he says, most people think cold comes from outside. You glance at the tower and then at the pit below it. And it does, he adds, but not always in the way you think. He nods once, as if a lesson has been given, and then says nothing more. You leave that day with more than a chilled jug. You leave with the knowledge that coldness, in a place like this is not simply the absence of heat. It is an achievement, a collaboration between nature and patience, between wind and stone, between generations. That night, you chill the king's pomegranate nectar with new reverence. And when he raises that same eyebrow, you allow yourself the smallest of smiles. Because now you know exactly how the miracle happened. And better yet, how to repeat it. The next few days pass in a blur of quiet transformations. You are still a palace servant, yes. You still wash your hands 20 times a day, still slice too much honeycomb into too little yogurt, still bow when someone higher than you walks by, which is basically everyone. But something's changed. You now know where to find the wind. More importantly, you know how to ask it for help. Each morning, before the market awakens, and before the kitchen fills with steam and shouting, you make a quiet pilgrimage to the wind tower. You carry with you a small jug wrapped in linen, and more often than not, a basket of fruit mash or herbal infusion. Rose and peach, mint and fig year, cucumber and tamarind. Each is subtle offering to the king's increasingly refined palate. You become something of a legend among the kitchen staff. No one quite understands how you're doing it. You aren't exactly telling anyone. They assume you're bribing someone in the upper chambers, or using some kind of forbidden salt. One boy even accuses you of using imported Greek sorcery. You don't deny it. Why should you ruin a good mystery? The king now requests your chilled drinks regularly. Always served in the same clay cup, always poured the same way, gently from just above the rim, so as not to disturb the aroma. He doesn't smile, but his continued silence is the loudest compliment you could hope for. One afternoon, while preparing an infusion of dried hibiscus and green plum, a scribe from the royal court approaches you. He's tall, angular, and impossibly well-groomed, like someone who's never tripped over a loose sandal in his life. "You're the drink boy," he says, more as confirmation than question. You nod. You're used to being identified by utility. He holds up a scroll. "The Queen's aunt has taken notice. She wants one of your wind-cooled nectars sent to her chambers tonight." You blink. The Queen's aunt is infamous for her migraines, her collection of pet monkeys, and her tendency to throw pottery when displeased. You nod again. "I'll make it fresh," you say, already mentally assembling the flavors, perhaps something with lavender and lime. She also wants to know, the scribe continues, adjusting his grip on the scroll, how you make them cold. Now, this is trickier. You don't answer right away. The man sighs and taps the scroll against his palm, impatient. You don't have to give the whole recipe, just enough to satisfy the court gossip. You consider your words. "I'll let the wind help," you say carefully, "and I listen to what the earth remembers." The scribe gives you a look like you've just told him the moon makes soup, but he writes it down anyway. That evening, the drink is delivered, cold, fragrant, topped with crushed mint and a single edible flower. Word comes back the next morning. The Queen's aunt didn't throw anything, not even the cup. A record. A few days later, a junior engineer from the royal builders visits the tower. He doesn't speak to you, just walks around it, measuring with a bit of knotted rope, peering up at the vent like a child trying to spot the moon through a reed. You watch from a distance, arms folded, part wary and part proud. It occurs to you then, this knowledge isn't yours to own. It was never yours, not really. You simply found it again. Still, it's not something you'll surrender easily. Let them measure. Let them try to copy it in diagrams and formulas. They'll never quite capture the stillness, the hush, the way the coolness blooms not from precision, but from patience. That night, you sit outside the tower with the old man again. He's chewing fennel seeds and watching the stars appear one by one. You ask him, "How did you learn about this place?" He shrugs. "My father brought me here. His father brought him. Did they teach you how to use it?" "No," he says. "They just let me feel it. That was enough." You nod, because now you understand. Some knowledge is passed by touch, by breath, by sitting in silence and letting the world whisper what it knows. You leave the tower just before dawn, jug in hand, air still cool against your face. As you walk back through the waking city, merchants beginning to unroll their carpets and sweep away the dreams of night, you think about how absurd it is to chill a drink in the middle of the desert, to ask the wind for help and to have it answer. To learn something ancient not from scrolls or sermons, but from clay and shadow and waiting. Back in the kitchen, you uncork the jug. The scent of lime and lavender rises softly, like a secret. You pour it into the queen's aunt's cup, and for just a moment, the entire palace feels cooler. You've begun to notice things, tiny details that never caught your attention before. The way the wind changes direction ever so slightly at twilight. How shadows slide longer across the courtyard, cooling the stone paths just before the call to prayer. Even the sounds seem altered now, sharper at dawn, rounder at dusk. Your senses have changed, or perhaps you're simply listening more. By now, you've made the tower your own, though you'd never say that aloud. The old man still tends to it, still sweeps the floor and adjusts the reed stuff between bricks when they loosen. But when you arrive, he nods in that barely their way, like a fellow priest might to another, both of you serving a temple neither of you owns. One morning, he says, "You should see where the ice begins." You tilt your head. "I thought it began here." He shakes his head slowly. "No, it begins where the water slows." And so you find yourself, a few days later, trudging into the hills west of the city with a bundle of flatbread and dried apricots tucked in your satchel. The old man has drawn you a rough map in the dirt, just enough for you to recognize the path. He calls it the channel. What he means is this: an ancient irrigation canal, narrow and stone-lined, winding its way from the mountains to the city. It feeds the orchards, the public fountains, the clay cisterns. It also feeds the yakhchals, the underground ice houses. The genius lies not just in where the water ends, but in how it travels. You follow the channel for hours. Its water is no more than a trickle at this time of year. But in spring, the snow melt will turn it into a ribbon of cold silver, cutting through sand and heat like a blessing. You dip your hands into it once. Even now, in the warm season, the water is startlingly cold. And suddenly, it becomes clear. The Persians didn't just rely on winter snows or magical pits. They created conditions, engineered them. They diverted water into shallow, shaded pools at night during the coldest months. The desert's freezing temperatures would solidify the surface layer into ice. Then, in the morning, they'd harvest those sheets and layer them inside the yakhchals, building winter one thin slab at a time. It wasn't brute force. It was elegance, patience, a game of degrees. You rest beneath a pomegranate tree and chew on an apricot, the sweet tartness making your mouth water. As you look back at the long, winding path of the water channel, you realize it is, in a way, a story written across the land. A story of thirst, of survival, of clever defiance. By the time you return to the city, the sun is high, and your skin is brown from its touch. But your thoughts are elsewhere, colder, quieter. That evening, back at the tower, you draw your own map in the dirt. You trace the mountains, the channel, the shaded pools, the city walls. You mark the tower, the yakhchal, the flow of wind, the lie of shadow. The old man watches in silence. After a while, he nods. You see now. You do. Because cold, in this desert, is not an event. It is a path. And now, you are beginning to walk it. Word spreads, not just of your drinks, but of your knowledge. One of the palace engineers seeks you out, nervous, formal, but clearly interested. "We're building a new summer hall for the crown prince," he says. "A garden, a pool, some kind of cooling system." You raise an eyebrow. He shifts uncomfortably. "They say you understand wind." You smile but say nothing. You don't understand wind. You listen to it. Still, you agree to visit the site. It's a skeleton of wooden scaffolding and smooth clay walls rising beside a grove of mulberry trees. The engineer walks you through the layout, pointing to the shaded arcade, the planned fountain, the open-air lounge where the prince will likely eat too many grapes. You run your fingers along a half-finished wall, test the air with your palm. Then you point. "Build the tower here," you say, "but curve it like a seashell. Let it breathe." He frowns. "A seashell." You nod. The wind likes curves. He doesn't understand, but he writes it down anyway. Later, you sit in the yakhchal again, alone, listening to the slow echo of wind whispering through the shaft above. It's not cold now. It's late summer, after all, but the air is still noticeably cooler here than anywhere else. The walls sweat faintly. You wipe your palms on your tunic. You think of the water's journey from mountain to city, from stone channel to shaded basin to this dark, silent chamber. You think of how little of it freezes and how much effort it takes to store that precious sliver. But that's the secret, isn't it? You don't need to freeze everything. Just enough to remind you that winter can exist here. That even in the hottest corner of the world, cold is possible. And with that, sleep comes easier. You wake earlier now, before the kitchen boys begin their loud chopping, before the heavy bells ring across the eastern wall of the palace. The wind wakes you, not with noise, but with suggestion. A whisper across the clay tiles. A tug at the loose fabric of your robe. A nudge that says, there's something new to feel today. So you rise. You've taken to visiting the yakhchal not only as a cooling chamber, but as a place to think. It's still dark when you slip past the fig garden, past the water jars, and into the low, domed structure. There's a certain stillness to it, more than silence. It feels like you're stepping into a memory. The inside smells of lime plaster and something else you can't quite name. Dust, maybe, or the echo of a winter long gone. You run your hand along the wall, the smoothness interrupted only by the faint seams of the brickwork. The dome tapers into a narrow chimney at the top, and as your eyes adjust, you can see a sliver of pre-dawn light filtering through it, illuminating the air in a soft cone. Today, you're not here to chill anything. You're here to listen, because something's bothering you, a pattern that doesn't quite fit. The old man's words repeat in your mind. It begins where the water slows. You think of the channel, the irrigation basins, the precise timing required to freeze even a finger's width of water. But what happens in the months when the nights aren't cold enough? What happens when a harvest festival runs late? Or the spring comes too soon? You stare at the base of the yakhchal where the remaining ice rests, covered in packed straw. It's old ice, weeks old, dwindling. And that's when it hits you. The true brilliance of this system wasn't just freezing water, it was preserving the cold, making winter last into summer. You step back outside and squint toward the east. The sun is still below the horizon, but the edges of the sky are softening. You grab a stick and begin sketching in the dirt again. This time, not a map of rivers and towers, but of layers. Ice at the bottom, straw above it, clay and lime forming a dome above that. Then the air shaft, a slow spiral of heat rising out, drawn upward by the temperature difference. It's not just passive cooling. It's a conversation between temperature and time. You remember a word one of the scribes used, entropy. He'd explained it to the cooks once while trying to justify why he needed more olive oil for his ink. Everything tends toward disorder, he said, unless you design something clever. The Persians had designed something clever. Your thoughts are interrupted by the soft sound of footsteps. You look up to see the old man approaching, carrying a small clay pot in one hand and a folded shawl in the other. He gestures to a shaded bench. Sit, he says, and passes you the pot. It's full of milk, chilled and faintly sweet. You sip. It's cool enough to be refreshing, but not shockingly cold. The kind of coolness that feels earned. The old man watches you drink, then settles beside you with a grunt. You're thinking too hard again, he says. You smile. I was just wondering how long this place has existed. He shrugs. Longer than memory. Not as long as stone. And there it is, his usual way of answering something without actually answering it. But you don't mind. Sometimes, not knowing is part of the magic. Later that day, you help the younger kitchen staff carry a fresh batch of syrup jugs up from the storerooms. You catch one of them trying to smuggle a fig into his robe. You say nothing, but give him a look, and he sheepishly eats it in full view instead. Word has spread, not just in the palace, but beyond. Merchants are asking how the royals keep their fruit cool during the midday heat. A caravan driver tells you he heard about a magic cave of snow beneath the palace. A scholar from Ecbatana sends a scroll asking for diagrams, purely for academic purposes, he insists. The palace engineer, still fiddling with the design of the summer garden, corners you again. What if we build a yakhchal in miniature, he says breathlessly, a portable one. You raise an eyebrow. A pot inside a pot, he explains, with ash or sand between them. Evaporative cooling. You grin. Let me know if it works. He nods and dashes off. The idea stays with you, though. A cooling chamber, small enough to carry. A desert technology made mobile. It sounds absurd, but then again, so does ice in the desert. By nightfall, you're sitting in the tower again, listening to the same dry breeze. You've learned its habits now. How it sharpens just before dusk. How it softens again near midnight. How it will sometimes shift direction for no reason at all, as if bored. You don't try to control it. You simply let it pass over you, bringing news from the mountains. You close your eyes, and somewhere between the hush of the air and the gentle creak of reeds stuffed into ancient stone, you remember something your mother once said to you, long before the palace, before the towers and the cold clay jugs. If you listen to the wind long enough, it will tell you where the shade is. You smile, even as sleep begins to pull you downward, like cool hands guiding you into a quiet place. Because she was right. The days grow warmer, the air heavier, as the sun rises higher and higher in the sky. You feel the seasons shifting now, the heavy weight of the summer heat beginning to settle in the city, pressing down on everything. The evenings are warm, but not stifling. The breeze that once carried the scent of distant mountains now smells of earth, dry, cracked earth. You can almost taste the dust on your tongue. The yakhchal still stands, solid and unbothered by the heat, its underground chambers holding onto the remnants of winter, keeping the ice tucked away from the sun's grasp. You find yourself there more frequently, not because you need to escape the heat, though it certainly helps, but because there's something comforting in its cool, measured stillness. And then, there's the whisper of the palace walls. You can hear it in the murmurs of the servants, in the soft footsteps of those who walk between the court and the gardens, who carry messages back and forth. There's talk, rumors, really, that a delegation of foreign merchants has arrived in the city. They've come from the far-off lands of India, with their silks and spices and exotic goods. You've seen them in the markets, their faces a bit too stiff and their eyes darting around the unfamiliar streets. They speak in low voices, passing scrolls from hand to hand. And of course, there's one rumor you can't escape. They've heard about the ice. It's not just the yakhchal that has captured their interest. It's the way you use the wind, the delicate balance between heat and cold. The idea that the Persians, despite living in one of the harshest climates on Earth, have figured out how to harness nature's elements with such precision. That, they say, is what's really worth marveling at. That is the true treasure hidden in plain sight. In the coolness of the evening, just after sunset, you find yourself walking the length of the palace walls. The last rays of daylight stretch lazily across the rooftops, casting long shadows that seem to hold the promise of rest. Your mind drifts, considering how much the city has changed since you first arrived. The hustle and bustle of trade and politics is constant now, even as the summer heat presses in. It's all a bit more complex, a bit more tangled than it was before. And then, the cool air hits you. You've come to a spot where the wind always seems to be at its calmest, where the stonework of the walls has held its shape through countless seasons. The place is silent, quiet, save for the distant hum of the city, and you stop to catch your breath. The faint scent of the yakhchal drifts on the wind, carried on the same air that cools your skin, and you realize, with a small shock, that you've come to love this city. Not because of its power or its wealth, not because of its rulers or its endless flow of resources, but because of the simple, quiet brilliance of its people. They know how to make do with what they have, how to stretch the earth's limits, how to work with nature's oddities, to coax out the tiniest bit of relief when it's needed most. And that's when the merchants find you. They've come to the yakhchal, not just for the ice, but for the knowledge behind it. They want to know how you've made the desert's unbearable heat something to be managed, not feared. They want to understand how the wind behaves in your hands, how the ice lasts longer than anyone thought possible. They want you to teach them. You can't help but smile as they lay out their offerings. Fine silks, bright and vibrant, more delicate than anything you've seen. Precious gems, dazzling under the sun. Spices, their rich scent filling the air with promise. Their faces are earnest, eager even, But you know it's not the silk they're after, nor the gems. It's your secret, but you have no intention of sharing it. Not yet, anyway. There's too much at stake. The truth is, you're not sure what they expect. The ice is just the beginning. You have no desire to hand over that beginning to anyone just yet. You don't trust them. Still, you allow them to walk with you. They follow you to the yakhchal, where the old man is tending to his morning tasks, adjusting the straw that covers the ice and checking the layers. He doesn't speak, doesn't look up, and for a moment, you wonder if he remembers the first time he showed you how to preserve it. The merchants stare in wonder as you stand beside the yakhchal, gesturing to the underground chambers where the ice still rests. You tell them that what's truly important is not the ice itself, but how it's protected, how each layer works together to keep the cold inside. You tell them softly, the desert teaches you to think in layers. The merchants nod, exchanging glances, their minds whirring with thoughts of how to replicate this in their own lands. But you already know they will never quite get it. Not the way you do. Not the way the old man does. There's something about the land here that teaches you more than just techniques. It teaches you patience. The wind here whispers things, subtle truths you can only learn by sitting in the coolness of the night, by listening to the slow, constant pulse of time. And as the merchants leave, taking only a fraction of what they hope to gain, you realize that, despite the wealth and exotic goods they've offered, you're richer in ways they will never understand. And so, you settle into the quiet rhythm of your days, no longer chasing knowledge or power, but simply living with it, breathing it in as the cool night air fills your lungs. The wind continues to blow, the seasons shift, and the yakhchal still stands as a quiet sentinel, holding the secret of the desert's cold. But now, as sleep gently tugs at your thoughts, you know there's no hurry to guard it. Not anymore. As the months pass, the temperature in the city begins to shift once more. The oppressive summer heat slowly releases its grip, easing into the softer warmth of autumn. There's a kind of quiet satisfaction in knowing that the worst is over, that the worst heat has been kept at bay, not just by the ingenuity of the yakhchal, but by something more elemental, the cycles of the earth itself. You feel it, too, in the way the air shifts in the mornings. The cool winds now come from the north, carrying the promise of rain that has not yet arrived, but will. The sun no longer feels quite so aggressive, and with the cooler nights, you sleep deeper. The yakhchal, as always, remains the same, a faithful companion to the seasons, standing untouched by the changing temperatures that surround it. Yet, despite the chill in the air, there is still an unsettling hum beneath it all, a quiet, ever-present tension that you can't seem to shake. Perhaps it's the arrival of winter on the horizon, or perhaps it's something more tangible, the growing whispers from the outer corners of the kingdom. The merchants who came earlier are still asking questions, still seeking answers, their eyes full of calculation, measuring the worth of everything you've done, everything you've created. But there's more to it than that. More than the merchants, more than the travelers. In fact, you haven't seen them around much lately. In their place, there are the other figures, the ones who come quietly and leave without a trace. Their faces are hidden under hoods and veils, their voices low and urgent. You've grown used to this quiet flurry of activity, these shadowy dealings. After all, you're not just a keeper of cold. You're a keeper of knowledge, a role that carries its own weight in the empire. One evening, after a long day of observing the shifting wind patterns, you wander back to the yakhchal with a new idea in your mind. Perhaps, in your free time, you might begin to study the construction of the ice storage chambers further, not simply to maintain them, but to understand them on a deeper level. But when you arrive, you're greeted by an unexpected sight. There's a large group gathered around the base of the yakhchal, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of oil lamps. They seem to be deep in conversation, but the moment you step closer, they fall silent. You recognize one or two of them, but the others are strangers to you, distant traders from the outskirts of the empire, their voices low and hushed. The old man stands at the center, his back to you. His posture is rigid, his hands held behind him. He doesn't turn as you approach, but but you feel the weight of his awareness, as if he's waiting for you to make the first move. The air is thick with unspoken words, and you find yourself frozen for a moment, unsure of what's happening. There's no real hostility, no immediate threat, but something is different. The way they move, the way they look at you. They aren't just here to see the ice, to marvel at the technology. They're here for something more. Then, slowly, the old man speaks, his voice softer than you expected. "It's time," he says. A chill runs down your spine. Not from the coolness of the chamber, but from the words themselves. What would he possibly mean by this? What does he think you're ready for? You take a cautious step forward, but before you can speak, a tall figure steps from the shadows. He is tall, broader than most, and his movements are smooth, like a predator's. His face is hidden beneath a dark cloth, but there's something about his presence that sends a ripple through the gathering. His voice, when he speaks, is measured. We need to understand how it works, how you've made it last. We've traveled far for this. The others nod, but you can see the skepticism in their eyes. They're not just traders. There's something else, something more pressing. You realize, suddenly, that you're no longer the simple keeper of ice. You are a part of something far greater, far more dangerous. "I've already told you," you reply, your voice more firm than you expected. "It's a matter of layers of patience of the wind. I don't have the time to teach you everything." But the man isn't deterred. He steps closer, his shadow stretching over the ground. Then perhaps it's time for a different kind of lesson. The old man remains silent, but you can feel his tension too. He stands a little straighter, his gaze never leaving the man in the dark. You don't know whether to be alarmed or intrigued, but something in you shifts. This is no longer just about the yakhchal. This is about power, power that has been carefully hidden beneath the surface for a long time. You can almost hear the crunch of the ice underfoot as the seconds stretch out, each one more drawn out than the last. You think about the years of quiet study, the slow unfolding of this delicate art. You think about the simplicity of it all, the cold, the wind, the clay. But now it's more than that. Now it's a matter of trust. You can hear the wind outside the walls of the yakhchal, how it seems to call to you, asking you to remember what you've learned. But you also hear the other voice, the one that's a bit harder to ignore, the one that asks you how much you're willing to risk to preserve this quiet life. And as the moment stretches on, the decision feels less like a choice and more like a conclusion. It's time. With a deep breath, you step forward, ready to face what comes next. The decision feels heavier than anything you've made before, but there's no going back now. The figures standing in the flickering light of the yakhchal are waiting for you, their eyes heavy with expectation. They've come for the ice, for the cold you've perfected, for the knowledge you've guarded so jealously. But you realize, as you stand there with the weight of their gaze on you, it's not just the ice they want. It's everything you've learned, everything you've understood about the delicate balance between heat and cold, about how nature can be coaxed into doing the impossible. The tall figure, his face still obscured by cloth, steps forward again, and the others follow, a silent procession that carries with it a quiet intensity. It's clear now, this isn't about trade or barter. They've come for something else, something you're not yet ready to fully grasp. "I told you," you say, trying to keep your voice steady, "it's the wind, the air, the way the earth responds to it. It's all about layers. The wind cools the stone keeps the ice, it's simple." But the figure doesn't respond to your words. Instead, he watches you with an expression that's difficult to read. Then, unexpectedly, he asks a question that catches you off guard. "Where did you learn this?" You blink, caught by the depth of the question. It's not a question about how the yakhchal works, or even about how ice is kept. It's a question about you, how you came to understand it all, how you discovered these secrets of the desert, how you mastered the balance between hot and cold in such a way that it was almost as if the earth itself was working in your favor. It's a question that makes your mind spin. How did you learn it? The answer isn't as clear as it should be. You didn't have a teacher. You didn't have someone to guide you. It was just you, the wind, and the land. It was something you had to figure out, a riddle that required patience, observation, and perhaps a little bit of fate. I just paid attention," you reply, your voice quiet. "I watched. I learned. I was patient." The figure pauses, studying you carefully. His gaze is piercing, as if weighing something in the balance. It's as though he's searching for something deeper, trying to determine whether you're telling the truth or if you're holding something back. Behind him, the others are still, silent, their eyes focused on you. It's a strange feeling to be the center of such intense attention. You've never been one for the spotlight, never sought to stand out. But here now it feels inevitable. The old man, standing off to the side, doesn't speak, but there's something about the way he holds himself that tells you he's been expecting this moment. Perhaps he's seen it coming for longer than you have. Perhaps he knows what's at stake, and he knows, too, what you're about to face. The silence stretches, thick and palpable. The wind outside stirs, a soft rustling against the stone walls. You can hear the distant hum of the city beyond the yakhchal. But here, in this moment, it feels like everything has been drawn to a standstill. Finally, the figure speaks again, his voice low but firm. You have knowledge that many would do anything to possess. But the question is, what will you do with it? His words hang in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. You wonder whether he's asking about the ice, about the wind, about the yakhchal, or if he's asking about something else entirely. Maybe he's asking about you, and how far you're willing to go to protect what you've learned. Maybe he's asking if you're ready to share your secret with the world, or whether you'll keep it locked away, hidden in the cool, quiet chambers of the yakhchal. You don't have the answer. Not yet. The weight of his question presses down on you, and for a moment, all you can hear is the thrum of your heartbeat in your ears. The figure seems to sense your hesitation, and with a small, almost imperceptible nod, he steps back, signaling the others. The tension eases just a little, but the atmosphere remains charged. It's as if the very air around you is waiting, holding its breath to see what will happen next. We'll return tomorrow, the figure says, his tone softer now, as if he's granting you time to think, to decide. But remember, the ice won't last forever. Nothing lasts forever. And with that, the group begins to disperse, their steps quiet and measured as they melt into the shadows, leaving you alone with the old man. For a long while, neither of you speaks. The silence between you is comfortable, familiar, but there's an edge to it now. A question hanging between you, unasked but understood. The old man knows what's coming, and perhaps he knows how you will choose. But he doesn't press you. He simply stands there, his back to the coolness of the yakhchal, watching the night fall. You feel the weight of the wind against your skin, the steady rhythm of the world that continues to turn, as it always has. The moment of decision hangs in the air like the heat before a storm. The world outside is still, waiting. The city sleeps, but you know that tomorrow will bring something new, something you can't yet predict. For now, though, there's only the quiet of the yakhchal, the coolness that the wind brings with it, and the knowledge that, in the end, you may have more control over the ice than you ever thought possible. The night passes quietly, but the silence is heavy with anticipation. You lie awake long after the shadows have settled, turning over the events of the evening in your mind. The figure with the cloth covering his face, the quiet tension that filled the air, the old man who seemed to know far more than he let on. Everything feels somehow weightier now. The chill of the yakhchal seems to seep into your very bones, and in the stillness, you wonder what tomorrow will bring. The following morning, you rise early, as you always do. The air is crisp, the dawn light spilling across the earth in soft golden hues. The world feels different today. The usual peace of the yakhchal is now filled with a quiet sense of urgency. You can't shake the feeling that everything has changed, that the fragile balance you've spent years maintaining is now teetering on the edge of something unknown. The merchants from the previous night have not returned yet, but you feel their presence lingering. You know they will be back, and this time, things won't be as simple as they once were. They want more than just your cold, more than just the ice they've come to trade for. They want to understand, to learn, to take something from you that goes beyond the physical. As the hours pass, you prepare yourself for their return. The yakhchal is ready. The ice chambers are perfectly maintained, the stones cooled by the wind and the earth working in harmony. But it's not the ice that weighs most heavily on your mind. It's the choices that lie ahead. You can't help but feel that the knowledge you've cultivated here, the quiet wisdom you've developed through years of observation, is something that others would kill to possess. You think of the question that the figure asked you last night. What will you do with it? The answer, you realize, is not something you can easily give. You've spent too much time learning, too much time understanding how to keep the ice, how to harness the wind and earth to your advantage. It's not just a matter of trade anymore. It's a matter of control. The knowledge you hold could change everything, but at what cost? You step outside, letting the morning air cool your skin. The wind has picked up, the dry desert air brushing across your face. It's a familiar sensation, but today it feels different, as if the winds are carrying something more than just the usual desert dust. You feel the pull of the city, the hum of activity in the distance. The life of the empire is moving, shifting, and you know it's only a matter of time before you're swept up in its currents. As you walk toward the yakhchal, you see the old man standing near the entrance. He doesn't speak at first, but you can feel his eyes on you, as if he's waiting for you to make a move. Today, you must decide, he says finally, his voice low but clear. The merchants will come, and they will ask. But you must know that once you share your secrets, once you give them this knowledge, it will no longer be yours. The empire will have it, and they will use it as they see fit. You nod, the weight of his words sinking in. It's true. Once you let the knowledge slip out, once you allow the empire to have it, there will be no going back. The ice, the cold, the secrets of the yakhchal, it will all become just another tool in the empire's vast machine. But you must also know, the old man continues, that your knowledge could save many. The ice, the cold, it could protect the lives of those in the desert. It could bring prosperity. It could ease suffering. The choice is not just about ownership. It's about purpose. You pause, turning his words over in your mind. Save many, or preserve the secret for yourself, keeping it locked away, untouched by the larger world. It's a choice that's far more complex than you initially imagined. It's not just about ice. It's about how that ice could change everything. It could bring stability, or it could bring chaos. The old man watches you for a long time, as if waiting for you to reach some kind of conclusion. But there is no conclusion yet. Not for you. The decision feels too large to make, too weighty. As if on cue, the figures from last night return. This time, there are more of them. More traders, more cloaked figures whose faces are hidden beneath shadows. They move with purpose, their steps measured and deliberate. There's a tension in the air that wasn't there before, and you can feel it wrapping around you like a tight, suffocating cloak. The moment of decision has arrived. The tall figure leads the group, his presence looming as he approaches you once more. His voice, when he speaks, is soft but firm. "We're ready," he says. "We've come to understand your methods. We've come to learn how you've managed to keep the ice so long. The empire requires this knowledge." You hesitate for a moment, your mind racing. The old man's words echo in your ears. The knowledge you hold could be used for good, for the betterment of the empire. Or it could be used for darker purposes, to control, to manipulate. But there's one thing you know for certain now. Whatever choice you make, it will change everything. The tall figure's gaze is unwavering, and you realize, with a sinking feeling in your stomach, that there's no going back. You've reached the crossroads, and it's time to step forward, whether you're ready or not. The decision weighs heavily on you, like a stone that's too large to move, too heavy to lift. The figure's eyes, hidden beneath the cloth, pierce through the silence. They're waiting for you to speak, to make the choice that will determine not just the fate of the ice, but perhaps the future of this entire region. The wind stirs again, sending a cool shiver through your skin. It feels like the world itself is holding its breath, waiting for you to make up your mind. I need to understand, you finally say, your voice barely above a whisper. Why the empire? Why does it need this knowledge? The tall figure regards you for a moment, and then, as if weighing the sincerity in your words, steps forward. His voice is soft, almost soothing, but you can sense the undercurrent of urgency beneath it. The empire needs control, Stability, he says. The land here is harsh, unforgiving. The desert swallows everything: people, goods, life itself. What we've learned from you, what we can take from your methods, could help ensure that the empire remains strong, that it can survive the desert's endless wrath. The words hang in the air, heavy with implication. You know that what he's saying is true. The empire is always looking for ways to consolidate power, to ensure its dominance over the harsh desert terrain. But there's something unsettling about the way he frames it, as though the people, the very lives that might benefit from the ice, are secondary to the empire's ambitions. And then, just as you're about to respond, the old man speaks. Be careful, he warns, his voice low and gravelly. Once the empire gets its hands on this knowledge, they won't let it go. You'll never be able to control it again. You'll be a small part of something much bigger, something you may not be able to stop. You feel a knot tighten in your stomach. The old man's words are laced with the bitter sting of experience. He's seen the way the empire operates, and you can hear the caution in his voice. He's warning you that once the yakhchal's secret is revealed, the empire will take control, and there will be no turning back. But despite the weight of his warning, you know that something has to change. The ice, the wind, the land, it's all connected, all part of the delicate balance that keeps the yakhchal alive. But can you live with the idea of giving it up? Of handing it over to those who may not understand its true value, who may simply use it to further their own ambitions? The tension in the air is almost palpable as you turn your gaze back to the group of merchants. They stand in silence, awaiting your answer. The moment feels suspended, as though time itself has slowed down. The wind outside picks up again, the dry dust swirling in the distance, but here, within the yakhchal, it feels like a quiet storm is brewing. The tall figure speaks again, his voice more insistent this time. We come a long way. The empire requires this knowledge to ensure survival. Don't you see? You have the power to change things. The code you perfected could save countless lives, if you'll only share it. You think of the people who live in the harsh desert, those who struggle to survive, to find water, to protect themselves from the heat. The ice could bring relief, could ease their suffering. But at what cost? Will it be enough to justify what might happen next? Will it be enough to erase the uncertainty gnawing at you? The old man steps closer, his voice barely a whisper. The ice is your gift, but it is not just your burden. You don't have to carry this alone. His words are a reminder that, despite the weight of the decision, you don't have to make it alone. You've spent so much time within the yakhchal, tending to the ice, perfecting the balance, that you've become isolated from the world outside. Perhaps it's time to share it, to offer something beyond yourself. But how can you be sure the empire will use this knowledge wisely? The tall figure watches you, his face still hidden beneath the cloth, but you can feel his anticipation. The group stands silently behind him, as though they've all made their own calculations and are simply waiting for you to make the final decision. It's as if they know the power you hold in your hands, the power to change the course of events. You close your eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. The wind outside seems to grow stronger, as if urging you to make up your mind, to choose a path. The weight of the decision still lingers, but it's now accompanied by a strange sense of clarity. The yakhchal has always been about balance, about how the heat and cold coexist in harmony. Perhaps that's the answer. Perhaps this is about finding balance, not just between heat and cold, but between what is shared and what is kept hidden. I will share the knowledge. You say, the words leaving your lips before you have a chance to second-guess yourself. But I will also ensure that it's used with respect. The ice must be used wisely. It must serve the people, not just the empire. The tall figure's expression remains hidden, but you can sense the shift in the air. It's as if a weight has been lifted, as if the decision has finally been made, and now the world can move forward again. We understand, he says simply. Your terms are acceptable. The group begins to move, gathering their things, preparing to leave. But you know that this is not the end. The empire will take the knowledge, will use it, but the yakhchal's secret will always be with you. You've shared it, but you've also retained control over it in ways they may not fully understand. As they disappear into the desert, the old man stays behind, his gaze steady, as if he's seen this all before. He doesn't speak, but there's something in his eyes, an understanding, a quiet approval. For the first time in a long while, you feel a sense of peace. The wind continues to blow, the dust swirling in the distance, but the yakhchal stands as it always has, a testament to the delicate balance you've created. The ice will live on, not just in the yakhchal, but in the memories of those who've witnessed its power. And perhaps, in time, you'll come to understand that the choice you made wasn't just about ice. It was about something far deeper, a recognition that sometimes sharing your knowledge is the only way to ensure it lives on. The decision is made, and the weight of it begins to settle like the coolness of the ice, gently but undeniably. The old man, ever watchful, seems to notice this shift in you. He doesn't speak, not yet. He simply watches as the merchants make their way back toward the horizon, their figures slowly disappearing into the vast expanse of the desert. The sound of their footsteps fades, but the silence they leave behind is filled with something else now, something unfamiliar and heavy. As the last of the figures vanishes from sight, you turn back to the yakhchal, your sanctuary, your creation. The cool air inside still swirls, untouched by the heat outside. It's a constant, this place. It's always been a reflection of you, of your quiet understanding of the delicate balance between the elements. Now, it feels more fragile, as if the choice you made is hanging just above you like a silent storm cloud, waiting to release its weight. The old man speaks at last, his voice low but clear. The Empire has what wants. But remember, what you've given them is only a part of the picture. They may think they understand, but the full nature of the ice, the way it interacts with the desert's wind and earth, it's not something they will master easily. Not without your guidance. His words are both comforting and troubling. It's true what he says. The Empire may have the knowledge of how to preserve ice, how to use the wind to store it, but they won't understand its true potential without the subtle knowledge you've cultivated over years of observation. That knowledge, those quiet, unspoken practices, are still yours, and you hold on to them like the last precious drops of water in a drought. You've done what you needed to do, the old man continues. But the winds are changing. You're not just a keeper of ice now. You're a part of something bigger. His words bring with them an unsettling realization. The yakhchal, once an isolated sanctuary in the desert, has now become part of the wider world, and you have no control over how it will be used. The Empire will seek to exploit the knowledge you've shared, but how far will they go to harness it? Will they respect the balance you've worked so hard to maintain, or will they bend the elements to their own will? You think of the people outside the yakhchal, the merchants, the soldiers, the traders, the ones who will benefit from your knowledge. Will they understand the responsibility that comes with it, or will they see it as just another tool, another resource to be used and discarded when no longer needed? The old man's gaze is steady, as though he can see the doubts swirling in your mind. You've made your choice, he says again, as though reassuring himself as much as you. But now you must decide what comes next. Will you stay here, in your sanctuary, keeping to the old ways? Or will you step into the Empire's world, where your knowledge could change things for the better, or for the worse? The wind outside picks up again, stronger now, as though mirroring your inner turmoil. You stand in the doorway of the yakhchal, looking out over the desert. The horizon is empty, save for the swirling dust that the wind pushes across the dry earth. The quiet seems endless, but it's also fragile, like the ice in the chambers of the yakhchal. It could crack at any moment. You feel a pull in your chest, a longing to return to the simplicity of a yakhchal, to the days before the merchants arrived, before the Empire's influence began to creep closer. But you also know that this is no longer an option. The world has changed, and so must you. The question now isn't whether you'll remain hidden in your sanctuary. It's how you will move forward in a world that is shifting beneath your feet. Perhaps there's a third way, you say, more to yourself than to the old man. A way to share what I've learned without losing control of it. To give people the tools they need, but not let them distort it for their own purposes. The old man nods slowly, as though he's been waiting for you to arrive at this conclusion. That's the way of wisdom, he says quietly. The world may change, but your principles need not. You can be a part of it without losing yourself in it. You take a deep breath, feeling a sense of clarity begin to settle over you. The Empire may have its plans, but you have your own. You've always known how to maintain the balance between the ice and the earth, between heat and cold. Perhaps now, you'll need to find a way to maintain that balance in the wider world, to ensure that the knowledge you've shared is used for the good of all. The desert stretches out before you, vast and unforgiving. But now it no longer feels as lonely. It's as though you're connected to something much larger, something that flows through the sand and the wind, something ancient and enduring. The yakhchal may be your creation, but it's also a symbol of something timeless. The ability to adapt, to endure, to change with the world without losing the essence of who you are. And with that thought, you turn back toward the yakhchal. The old man watches you for a moment longer, then slowly begins to walk away. His work here is done, but yours is only beginning. As you step back inside, the cool air surrounds you once again. The ice glimmers in the dim light, and for the first time in a long while, it feels like a friend, not a burden. The knowledge you hold is both precious and powerful, and now it's yours to shape and protect. Whatever comes next, you know that you'll find a way to stay true to yourself and to the quiet, steady rhythm of the yakhchal. The days that follow seem to blur together, a series of quiet moments filled with reflection. The winds outside have shifted once again, whispering secrets across the desert, but inside the yakhchal, everything remains unchanged. The ice still hums its soft, eternal song, a song you know intimately, a song that seems to echo the rhythms of your own thoughts. Though the old man's words linger in your mind, you find a new sense of purpose beginning to take root within you. The Empire may have taken the knowledge, but you still hold the essence of the yakhchal, the delicate balance between heat and cold, the intricate understanding of the desert's ways. No one can take that from you, and no matter how the world changes, no one will ever truly understand it the way you do. The yakhchal has become more than just a structure. It's a symbol, a reflection of your relationship with the desert, with the land, with the ice. It's your creation, your legacy, and it's stronger than any empire, any outside force. The knowledge you've shared is a gift, but the wisdom you've gained over the years is something that no one can ever truly possess. As the sun sets one evening, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, you sit on the cool stone steps outside the yakhchal, gazing out at the horizon. The desert stretches endlessly before you, a vast expanse of shifting sands and whispering winds. There's a quiet beauty in it, in the way the land endures, in the way the winds change direction yet remain constant, in the way the stars emerge from the darkening sky, unwavering and eternal. You think of the empire, of its far-reaching ambitions, its desire for control, for power. But you also think of the people, the farmers, the traders, the wanderers, the ones who live in the shadow of the empire's grand designs. They are the ones who will benefit from the ice, who will find relief in the harsh desert heat. They are the ones who will carry the legacy forward. And perhaps that is where your true power lies, not in the knowledge itself, but in how it's shared. The yakhchal's secret, the delicate art of preserving ice, is not meant to be hoarded or controlled. It's meant to be passed on, to grow and evolve, to find new ways to survive and thrive in a world that is constantly changing. And maybe, just maybe, that's what the Empire doesn't understand. The true power of the ice lies not in its use, but in its sharing, in the way it connects people to the land, to each other. A soft breeze blows through the open doorway of the yakhchal, carrying with it the scent of the desert and the promise of something new. It's a feeling you've had before, when you first discovered the ice, when you first understood how the wind could carry it, how the desert could be tamed just for a moment. The world outside is vast, full of unknowns, but the yakhchal is a place of calm, of stability, of quiet understanding. And that, you realize, is enough. The old man's warning still echoes in your mind. The Empire will never fully understand the ice, And perhaps that's for the best. Their thirst for control is not what will preserve the balance of the desert, of the ice, of the yakhchal. No, that will come from the people, those who live on the fringes, those who understand the land not through conquest, but through harmony. You rise from the stone steps, feeling the coolness of the evening air brush against your skin. The horizon is dark now, the stars beginning to take their places in the night sky. You step into the yakhchal once more, the familiar coolness surrounding you like an old friend. The ice hums quietly, almost like a lullaby, as if it too has settled into the rhythm of the world. There's still much to do. The Empire may have taken a step toward using the knowledge, but the yakhchal is not done with you yet. There are still ways to protect it, to ensure that it remains a place of balance, of peace, of quiet wisdom. You know that your path is not an easy one, but it's yours to walk, and you will walk it with purpose, with clarity. You take one last look at the desert outside, the endless expanse that has always been a part of you. The winds are calm now, the night air cool and still. The yakhchal is your gift, your creation, and now it is a part of something larger, a part of the world outside. And in that moment, you understand. The knowledge, the wisdom, the ice itself, these things will endure, not because they are controlled, but because they are shared, passed from hand to hand, from person to person. The yakhchal's secret will never be lost, for it lives on in the hearts of those who truly understand its meaning. With a deep breath, you turn away from the door, stepping back into the cool embrace of the yakhchal. The night is quiet, and for the first time in a long while, you feel a deep sense of peace. The desert may change, the empire may grow, but the yakhchal will remain. A place of balance, a place of wisdom, a place where the past and the future meet in perfect harmony. As the days pass, the winds of the desert continue to shift, but the quiet rhythm of the yakhchal remains a steady companion. You no longer feel as though you are merely watching the world change from the distance of your sanctuary. Instead, you feel the pulse of the desert, of the land, and it resonates with something deeper inside you. You have become a part of the cycle of the wind and the earth, of the ice and the heat. And though the outside world moves relentlessly forward, there's a sense of peace that surrounds you here, inside the yakhchal, in this place you created. The empire, in all its vastness and reach, continues to try to make sense of the knowledge you've shared, attempting to harness the power of the ice in their own way. They build their systems, their roads, their markets, thinking they can control all. But as time moves on, they realize what you always knew, that this knowledge, the secret of preserving ice, cannot be captured in stone or paper. It is something that lives in the land itself, in the wind, in the ancient stones of the yakhchal, and most importantly, in the people who understand its true nature. You often think back to the old man's words, the way he spoke of the empire and its insatiable thirst for control. At first, it seemed as though he was warning you to retreat, to keep the yakhchal hidden away from the world. But now you understand. The world is always changing, and it will never stop. The winds will always shift, the empire will always expand, and the desert will always be there, waiting for those who know how to listen. And you, in your quiet way, have learned to listen. The ice, the yakhchal, and all that they represent, these are not things to be controlled. They are things to be shared, to be passed from one person to the next, in the quiet exchanges of knowledge that have always existed beneath the surface of empires and nations. You were never meant to be the master of this knowledge, but its steward, its guide, its humble keeper. And in that role, you have found a sense of purpose that is more profound than any empire's ambition. One evening, as you sit by the entrance of the yakhchal, the desert air cool against your skin, you hear footsteps in the distance. At first, they are faint, barely more than a whisper in the wind. But as they draw closer, you recognize the figures, merchants, traders, perhaps even a few wanderers who have come to see the yakhchal, to understand its secrets. They're different now, these visitors. They do not come with the same demands as the empire, the same expectation of control. Instead, they come with questions, with curiosity, with respect for what you've created. The yakhchal has become a place of pilgrimage, not for wealth or power, but for understanding. And in that, you find a deeper satisfaction than you ever thought possible. The empire may have tried to claim what was never theirs to take, but the people, the ones who truly understand the balance of the desert, the ice, and the wind, are the ones who will carry your legacy forward. You rise from your seat and walk toward the entrance. The night is peaceful, the stars beginning to shine brightly overhead. The wind blows gently, carrying the faint scent of the desert. You stand there for a moment, feeling the weight of the silence, of the knowledge you've shared, of the balance you've maintained. The merchants have arrived, but this time they bring with them no demands, no plans for exploitation. They come with gratitude, with the understanding that what you've given them is not a tool to be used, but a gift to be respected. As they approach, you smile, a quiet smile that feels more like a release than a greeting. You've come at the right time. You say softly, your voice carrying the weight of years of experience. The ice, the wind, the desert, they are all connected. And only by understanding that connection can you truly learn how to live with them. The merchants nod, their eyes filled with the same quiet reverence that you once held for this place. They are the ones who will carry the knowledge forward, not as conquerors, but as stewards, just as you were meant to do. And with that, you turn back to the yakhchal, the cool air welcoming you like an old friend. The ice hums softly, a familiar sound, as if the yakhchal is acknowledging your decision. You've done it. You found a way to share your knowledge without losing yourself to it. The legacy of the ice, of the wind, and of the yakhchal will live on, not in the hands of empires, but in the hearts of those who know how to listen. As the night deepens, the stars above shine brighter, and the wind carries with it the promise of something new. The world will continue to change, but the yakhchal will remain, a place of balance, a place of peace, a place where the past and the future meet in perfect harmony. And for the first time in a long while, you feel the weight of the world lift, replaced by a sense of quiet fulfillment. You have done your part. The yakhchal's secret, the delicate art of preserving ice, has found its place in the world, not as a weapon, but as a gift. With a deep breath, you settle back into the cool embrace of the yakhchal. The night is still, and for the first time in a long time, you feel the sense of peace that comes with knowing your place in the world. The ice hums its quiet song, the wind whispers its ancient secrets, and you, at last, have found your peace.